In this lesson, I'll be writing two model answers, one for a map and the other one will be for a process. As with the last lesson, there are no lesson know-it. Concentrate on the language that I use in each of the model answers. Again, here is my answer structure, and I'll be using this to write my report on the map and the process. In the vocabulary lesson, we learned some essential vocabulary that you need to use when reporting on maps. Now I'm going to share with you my top resource, which gives you all the language you need when reporting on maps. I highly suggest that you write it all down and try using it when practicing reporting maps. As you can see, there are 4 changes to report: an addition, something removed, changed, or when something is expanded. I'll be using this language bank to make my report. Let's take a look at the map that I'll be reporting on. This map shows us the island in 2 different times, and it also shows us how the island was developed. We need to report what changes were made to the island over time. We can see that before, the only features on the island were trees and there were no man-made structures, whereas after development there were lots of facilities and accommodation built on the island. With any map or process question, it's important that you look for a key, as this provides you with more information about what you can see. Let's read through the question. The 2 maps show an island before and after the construction of tourist facilities. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. The first thing I'll need to do, as with any IELTS Writing Task 1 question, is to paraphrase for my introduction. Both maps present how an island was developed for tourism over time. As you can see, I've highlighted 2 sections of my introduction, the first being present. Now remember, when paraphrasing the question, to create your introduction, do not repeat vocabulary. The question uses the word show, so I've changed that for the synonym present. Also, instead of saying before and after, I've used the phrase over time. Let's move on to our overview. My suggestion for writing the overview for a map is to make 2 general statements about what you can see. For example, how big is the area you can see? Were the changes big or small? Ask yourself these questions and make 2 general statements. Let's see what I wrote for my overview. The island is around 250 meters long and is surrounded entirely by the ocean. The development of the island was huge, with many facilities added over time. My 2 general statements were about the size of the island and the fact that the changes were quite large. Just remember that for your overview, we don't go into too much detail. Save that for the next section, which is our detailed paragraphs. So here is my first detailed paragraph, and I've highlighted the vocabulary that I've stolen from my ultimate list. You may notice that I haven't shown you my plan for the map report, and that's because with practice, you don't have to write it down. In my first detailed paragraph, I will talk about all the additions to the island, and my second detailed paragraph focuses on changes made to the coast. Again, it's up to you how you group the information into paragraph 1 and paragraph 2, as long as it makes sense and it helps the examiner to understand your report. Let's have a read through. Many facilities were constructed on the island. Accommodation is now numerous, with 6 buildings erected to the west of the island and a further 9 rooms added to the east. In the middle of the lodgings, a restaurant and reception area were also built, with footpaths and vehicle tracks added to connect the buildings. A pier was built to the south of the island, where boats can arrive. The trees remained unchanged on the island, with facilities erected around them. The only development to the beach on the west coast is a swimming area, which was added. So that is my full report on this map. Before we move on, I want to share some top tips for maps with you. The first thing I'd say to remember is to keep using the 4-part report structure. Also, that vocabulary master list, the table that I showed you just earlier, write it down and practice using it. Remember to explain in detail the changes that you can see and give locations where you can. Also, remember you must write an overview section, but don't be too specific in that part of your report. That's all for our map model answer. Let's move on to the process report. Here is the process that I'll be writing a model answer for. With processes, they'll either be natural or man-made, and of course this is a natural process called photosynthesis. And here's the question. The diagram below shows the process of photosynthesis. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features. Here is my paraphrased introduction. The illustration demonstrates how plants produce energy from sunlight. The question uses the words diagram below shows. I've swapped that for illustration demonstrates. Now let's move on to our overview. When it comes to processes, ask yourself these 5 questions to help you write your overview. Is the process natural or man-made? Is it cyclical or linear? In other words, does it repeat itself or does it have a clear end? How many stages are there? Where does it start and where does it end? And what is produced by this process? Here's my overview. Photosynthesis is a natural linear process that allows plants to create a type of sugar as their food. There are 5 main stages to this process. Again, the overview is nothing too specific. We'll save that for our detailed paragraphs. I've added our time-connective phrases here in this table. Let me read through my first detailed paragraph. To begin with, the sun sends light energy to plants, which is then absorbed along with carbon dioxide. At the same time, water is sucked up in the plant's roots. After that, the water then combines with light energy and carbon dioxide to produce sugar. Next, oxygen and vapour are released from the leaves. This is called transpiration. Finally, any excess sugar is stored as starch in the roots of the plant. So that brings us to the end of our process report. As with maps, I wanted to share a few quick tips with you before we finish this lesson. My first top tip is of course to use the same report structure. Also, do take time to look and understand the diagram of the process. Remember those 5 questions I showed you to help when writing your overview. And remember, you must include an overview to get a good score. Really importantly, don't panic if you don't completely understand the process. That's very normal. Do your best to explain from beginning to end what is happening in the visual information you can see. This brings us to the end of our lessons on IELTS Writing Task 1. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature or message me directly. Take care and I'll see you in the next lesson.